The stars outside the throne room looked quiet, but inside, something old had awakened. The alien queen sat on her high throne, surrounded by glowing crystals and silent guards. Her skin was silver blue, her eyes deep and cold like space itself. She ruled the Valorian Empire with perfect logic and no emotion. Feelings were seen as weakness, myths as lies, and humans as nothing but primitive life. But today, a strange signal had arrived. It was ancient, full of strange symbols and forgotten language. Her scientists decoded only one line: "The climax approaches." The room fell silent. Everyone stared at the queen, waiting for her response. She stood slowly and walked toward the glowing message. Her voice was calm. "This is only a myth," she said, "a lie from a time before reason." But deep inside her, something moved. Not fear, not belief, but curiosity. She looked out into the stars, and for the first time in many years, she whispered, "Could it be true?" Far away, near the edge of her galaxy, a wormhole suddenly opened. The alarm sirens rang, red lights flashed, and ships moved into battle positions, but nothing came out, nothing except a small metal pod. Broken and burning, it drifted slowly, like a leaf in a storm. Inside, a human male lay unconscious, breathing weakly. The queen watched the screen, her eyes narrow. "How did a human come this far?" she asked. "They are limited to primitive worlds. No signs of weapons," one general reported. "No energy core, just old Earth tech." But the pod was marked with something strange. An old Earth symbol, the infinity loop wrapped in flames. One of the scientists gasped. "That's the climax seal from the ancient Earth files." The queen froze. "That symbol is forbidden," she said. "Bring the pod to my lab. Do not wake the human until I arrive." Hours later, in the Royal Science Chamber, the pod rested inside a glass dome. The queen entered alone, her long robe glowing with starlight patterns. She looked down at the human. He had short brown hair, a scar on his jaw, and his hand clutched something, a small metal locket. Curious, she used her mind link to scan him. And something unexpected happened. Her vision filled with images. A young boy running through grass, laughter, music, a woman's voice calling Jack. Pain, fire, loss, hope, courage, love. It was too much. She broke the link and stepped back, her breath shaking. "What was that?" she whispered. "No logic, only feelings." Suddenly, the pod lights turned red. The human's hand moved. The locket fell and opened, showing a photo, a woman and a child, smiling. The queen couldn't look away. Something about the picture made her feel ... warmth. Then, without warning, the pod's door clicked. The queen stepped back. Guards rushed forward. But she raised her hand. "Stop," she said. "Let it open." Steam hissed from the edges as the door lifted. The human lay still, but his eyes opened slowly. They were green and tired, but full of something the queen didn't understand. Life. He looked around, then at her, and whispered, "Is this heaven or hell?" The queen stared at him, unsure how to answer. She had faced wars, destroyed stars, rewritten laws of time. But this man, this soft and broken human, made her feel unsure. "I don't know," she said quietly. "Perhaps both." Smiled weakly, then passed out again. Silence filled the room. But inside the queen's mind, the images still burned. The music, the laughter, the emotion. She turned to her chief scientist. "Find everything you can about humans," she ordered, "and tell no one outside this room what has happened here." As she left, she looked back one more time. The human lay in the pod like a seed waiting to grow. And in that moment, the queen remembered something her ancestors once feared, that the climax did not come with war, but with a whisper, a feeling, a choice. She walked through the dark hallway, her heart beating faster than ever before. The myth was waking, and so was she. The queen had seen millions of stars, but she had never seen one inside a dream, and yet, there she was, standing in the middle of a burning Earth sky, watching oceans boil and cities turn to ash. The sound of a piano played softly behind the chaos. A child laughed, a woman cried, and a voice whispered through the smoke, "You forgot what it means to feel." The queen woke up gasping, her body cold, her breath shaking. She had not dreamed in over 200 years. Dreams were signs of mental weakness among her kind. But this was no normal dream. It came from him. From the human male now locked inside the royal healing chamber. She rose from her resting pod and walked through the silver corridors of her palace. Each step echoed like a countdown. Guards stood still as statues, but their eyes followed her. With quiet fear, they had seen her angry, victorious, unstoppable. But never uncertain. In the lab, the human was awake. His name was displayed on the screen. Jack Carter. Age 29, origin, Earth, status, civilian mechanic, no weapons, no implants, no military past. Just a simple man, yet somehow he had survived deep space. Crossed a forbidden's wormhole and triggered the climax signal. She entered the room alone. Jack sat on the edge of the healing bed, his head down, hands folded. His voice was rough. "You came back." The queen didn't answer at first. She was scanning him again. His body was ordinary, but his mind was full of storms. Memories flooded her. A dog licking his face, fixing an engine with grease-covered hands, watching rain fall from a rooftop. And always that feeling, loss, love, hope, again and again. She pulled back, breathing faster. "You're not supposed to be here," she said finally. "No human has ever reached this system." Jack looked up at her, eyes tired but clear. "I didn't try to," he said. "I was just fixing a cargo ship near Jupiter. Then a light swallowed me." He paused. "And now I'm talking to a space queen with glowing eyes." For the first time in her life, the queen smiled, though only slightly. "You should be afraid," she said. Jack shrugged. "I think I passed. Scared about 2 wormholes ago." Silence filled the chamber. Then Jack looked around. "Where am I really?" he asked. "Is this some secret lab, or am I dead?" "You are in Velora," she said, "the capital of an empire that spans 13 galaxies." Jack whistled. "Wow," he said. "That's more than Starbucks locations on Earth." The queen didn't understand the joke, but she noticed something. She wasn't bored. In fact, she felt interested. "Why did the climax symbol appear on your pod?" she asked. Jack frowned. "What's the climax?" She studied his face, searching for lies. There were none. He truly didn't know. And that made it worse, because myths should not walk around confused and barefoot. She turned away, thinking, he wasn't a weapon, he wasn't a spy. But he had awakened something ancient. Suddenly, the wall behind them lit up. A glowing orb Jack had touched earlier was pulsing with red light. The orb scanned him again and activated a star map, one not seen in 10,000 years. It showed the galaxy folding in on itself, stars collapsing like dominoes. A single figure stood at the center of it all. Glowing, not a god, not a soldier, but a human. Jack stared at the map, confused. "What's going on?" he asked. The queen whispered, "You are what should not exist." She reached out and touched his shoulder, just a small contact. And again, her mind was filled with warmth. Stories, color, noise, memory, feeling. It was like touching the sun. She pulled back, shocked, her fingers trembling. He looked at her gentle. "Are you okay?" he asked. The queen blinked. No one had ever asked her that. Not in centuries, not even once. Suddenly, the door burst open. One of her generals stormed in, eyes wide with panic. "My queen," he said. "The High Council has seen the signal. They know the human is here. Let them come," she said coldly. "No one touches him until I understand what he is." The general hesitated. "But if the myth is true, then he is dangerous." The queen turned slowly, her voice sharp. "He is not dangerous," she said. "He is different." As the door closed again, Jack leaned back inside. "I just wanted to fix ships and get home in time for my sister's wedding." The queen stared at him. In her mind, the words of the ancient myth returned. "One shall come, wrapped not in flame but in feeling, not to destroy, but to awaken the stars, and for the first time. In her reign, she did not know what would happen next. A glass of water sat on the queen's desk, untouched. Then, without warning, ripples began to form, soft at first, then sharp, but there was no sound, no movement, no cause, only a silent pulse moving through space itself, in the deepest vault. Beneath the palace, forgotten machines lit up for the first time in 10,000 years. Stars on old holograms began to blink, one by one. Symbols danced an alien code across rusted screens. One message repeated over and over. Seed detected, climax pattern initiated. The queen stood in the observation dome, staring out into the black ocean of space. She didn't blink, didn't breathe. Behind her, Jack leaned against a wall, arms folded, looking at the view. "It's beautiful," he said softly. She glanced at him. "Empty," she replied. Jack smiled. "Maybe for you." He didn't realize it, but his presence alone was causing things to shift. The climax was not a weapon, not an army, not a war. It was a change, a slow, ancient force hidden in humanity's core, in secret. The queen had ordered the opening of the Forbidden's archives. Only 3 beings in her empire had ever entered. Now, she would be the 4th. She stood in front of a sealed door made from dark matter and locked by thought, her mind focused, and the door dissolved like dust inside. The air was heavy with history. Old books, energy cubes, and memory stones filled the chamber. In the center was a glowing pedestal with a warning etched in blood-colored script. "Do not touch if emotion lives within." Her hand hovered, uncertain. She touched it anyway. The pedestal lit up, and a hologram of an ancient queen, her ancestor, appeared. The voice was slow, shaking with fear and wisdom. "If you are hearing this, then the seed has returned. He will not fight like us. He will not conquer like us. He will change what cannot be changed, with feeling, not force." The queen's hands trembled. It was happening, and Jack didn't even know who, or what, he truly was. Back in the palace garden, Jack sat on a floating bench, watching alien birds fly in strange patterns. He talked to a small girl, one of the palace staff, who brought him fruit. She smiled and asked, "Are you the danger my mother warned me about?" Jack laughed. "No, I'm just the guy who fixes pipes and gets lost in wormholes." But every step he took, every word he said, left an invisible wake. The guards who hated him started to listen when he spoke. The palace workers who feared him began to smile back. Even the cold marble halls seemed warmer, softer, when he passed. The queen returned quietly. Watching from afar, she had ruled galaxies without doubt, without regret. But now she questioned every law she'd ever written. She sat beside him on the bench, the first time she had ever sat beside anyone not of her kind. "You're changing my people," she said. "I'm not trying to." Jack replied, "That's what makes it worse," she whispered. They sat in silence. A soft wind moved through the crystal trees. Then the stars above them flickered. One by one, constellations blinked out. The queen stood up fast, her voice calm but cold. "It's starting." Jack looked up. "What is?" "The collapse," she answered. "The echo of climax has reached the outer sectors. We have no time." They rushed back to the royal command room. Live maps showed galaxies dimming, data collapsing, panic rising, ships lost contact. Planets blinked out, not from destruction, but from something stranger. A reset, like the universe was being rewritten from inside its own code. Her generals arrived, shouting, afraid. Is it war? Is it the collapse of time? Is it him? The queen raised a hand, silencing them all. "No," she said, staring at Jack. "It is what comes after silence." Jack stood in the center of the room, confused and overwhelmed. "I don't know what you want from me," he said. "I'm just me." She stepped forward. "No, Jack," she said softly. "You are the climax, whether you want it or not." As the room darkened, the same symbol from his pod, The flaming infinity appeared on the floor beneath him. It pulsed in rhythm. With his heart, everyone froze, every machine stopped. The queen looked into his eyes and asked the question she had feared most. "Do you feel everything?" Jack blinked, then nodded. "Yes," he whispered. "All the time." And with that, the ancient machines hidden across the galaxy woke up. Not with weapons, but with light. Not with war, but with memory. The climax was no longer coming. It had already begun. And it began with a man who felt everything too deeply, in a world that had forgotten how to feel it all. It started with a whisper in the palace kitchen. One worker hummed a tune she had never heard before. Then, a guard tapped his fingers on the wall, following a rhythm he couldn't explain. A scientist smiled at a flower, not knowing why it made him feel calm. And a little girl laughed so hard she cried. Though she didn't know what was funny, the queen watched all this from her observation tower. Something was spreading, something dangerous, something beautiful. Emotion, it moved like wind, silent, invisible, unstoppable. And at the center of it all stood Jack, a human, an accident, a man who wasn't even trying. He was in the garden again, teaching the children how to play a game with stones. They didn't understand all the rules, but they laughed anyway. The queen's advisors watched from afar, uneasy. "This is how decay begins," one of them said. But the queen didn't reply. She was focused on Jack's face, calm, patient, alive later. Jack was in the repair bay, helping fix a broken shuttle. He didn't speak the language, but he smiled, pointed, and gave a thumbs up when things worked. The mechanics began to mimic his hand signs. One of them laughed when he hit his head. Another patted Jack on the back. A gesture of thanks. A gesture not seen in Valorian culture for over 1,000 years. The queen entered quietly. "You're not a soldier," she said. "Nope," Jack replied, wiping grease from his hands. "You're not a leader." "Nope again," he said. "I was just a guy who fixed engines and liked coffee." She tilted her head. "Then why are my people changing?" Jack shrugged. "I don't know," he said. "Maybe they were ready for something different." She watched him closely. "Do you feel proud of this?" He paused. "I feel connected," he said slowly. "And maybe that's enough." The queen walked away, but her mind stayed behind. She entered her private chamber and activated the memory field. Thousands of voices from her ancestors whispered. In code, each one warned of a time when logic would fail, and something older would return, not chaos, not war, but emotion. Her hand hovered over the shutdown command. She could erase Jack, delete his influence, end the spread, but her hand didn't move, because deep inside, she had begun to feel something too. Not weakness, not fear, but music. That night, Jack sat alone in the central hall, looking up at the artificial stars. The queen approached slowly, wearing a soft silver robe. Not armor. She sat beside him. Silence wrapped them for a long moment. Then Jack spoke. "When I was a kid, my sister used to sing to me when I was sad. She had this horrible voice, totally off-key. But when she sang, everything felt safe." The queen looked at him. "I have never heard a song," she said. "Not with meaning," Jack smiled. "You want to?" She nodded, unsure why. He hummed a slow earth tune, gentle and full of longing. As the notes floated through the empty hall, something incredible happened. The crystal lights shifted color, reacting to the emotion in his voice for the first time in recorded history. The palace responded not to commands, but to a feeling. The queen closed her eyes, letting the sound wrap around her. She didn't understand the words, but she understood the ache, the hope, the warmth. When the song ended, she opened her eyes and whispered, "This is what the myth meant." The climax was never about death. It was about rebirth through feeling. Jack looked confused. "I'm still just me," he said. "I didn't do anything special." "You were special the moment you cared," she replied. Suddenly, a distant alarm echoed through the walls. One of the queen's generals appeared. On the screen, "My queen," he said urgently. Half the fleet has stopped responding. They've joined the emotional wave, they call it. The awakening. The Queen stood slowly. She had ruled with logic all her life. But now, logic was dissolving, replaced by something raw and alive. She turned to Jack. I must go to the council soon, she said. They will see you as a threat, Jack. Stood too. Then let me speak for myself, he said. I don't want to be your enemy. You are not, she replied. But you are a mirror, and some will not like what they see. They looked at each other. Both unsure, both changing. In the distance, 1,000 voices hummed Jack's tune. Not perfectly, not in harmony, but together. The Queen felt it in her chest, the first true beat of something old and sacred. Not just the climax, but the beginning of what comes after it. The first sound was not an alarm. It was a scream, not loud, but sharp, echoing through the palace like glass breaking under water. The Queen rose from her meditation sphere instantly. Something was wrong, something was bleeding, not just a body, but the balance she had tried to protect. She rushed to the central hallway, followed by her guards. There, lying on the cold floor, was the little girl who once asked Jack if he was dangerous. She was alive, only stunned, but next to her was the broken remains of the gift Jack had carved for her. A small wooden bird, now shattered. What happened? The Queen asked, voice tight. A guard answered, his eyes full of fear. She was attacked by General Vokar's men. Vokar, her oldest general, her most loyal soldier, the one who had once sworn, I would burn stars for you. He had betrayed her, but why now? And why the child? The answer came moments later. A private signal flashed across her personal channel. Vokar's voice was cold, tired. My Queen, he said, you are no longer fit to rule. You've allowed emotion to rot our core. And now the council agrees. The Queen didn't flinch. She had expected this, but not so soon, not like this. She turned to her guards. Where is Jack? She asked. In the learning chamber, a guard replied. Alone. Her eyes widened. No, she whispered. It's a trap. She ran, faster than anyone thought possible, past the silver halls and glowing pillars, past stunned guards and shaking staff. The walls seemed to pulse with warning. Jack was in danger inside the learning chamber. Jack was reading one of the Queen's translated history tablets. He liked the strange drawings, war, peace, silence, and something that looked like dancing. Then the door slid open. 4 soldiers entered, weapons aimed. Whoa, guys, Jack said, raising his hands. Wrong room. They didn't answer, just stepped closer, slowly, coldly. Jack's mind raced. No Queen, no guards. No exits, his voice steady, but his heart pounded. If you're here for questions, I've got plenty, he joked. If you're here to kill me, maybe don't. Then, one soldier fired. A stunning pulse hit Jack in the chest, throwing him across the room. He crashed into the wall, gasping, pain shooting through his ribs. They moved closer. One raised his weapon to finish it. Then light exploded. A pulse of raw energy knocked all 4 soldiers back. The Queen stepped in, her robe burning with plasma light, her eyes wild with fury. You will not touch him, she said, not as a queen, not as a ruler, but as something more. She lifted Jack gently, supporting his weight. He looked at her through a haze of pain. You came back, he whispered. Always. She replied later, in the safe wing. Jack lay on a healing bed, connected to soft biowires. His chest rose and fell slowly. The Queen sat beside him, hands shaking. Emotion was no longer a disease. It was a fire inside her. And now she knew what it meant to burn. The High Council contacted her, their faces cold and ancient on the screen. You have broken protocol, said one. You allowed a human to infect our structure, said another. You let your heart choose over logic, said the third. The Queen didn't deny it. I have seen what logic alone creates, she said. Silence, fear, emptiness, and I will not return to that. The council was quiet for a long moment. Then they spoke together. You are removed from command. The Empire will reclaim control. The climax must be contained. The Queen ended the call. She turned to her loyal inner guard. I need time, she said. They will come with ships, soldiers, war. But we cannot fight them their way. How? Then, my queen? They asked. She looked at Jack, still unconscious, still breathing, still changing. We fight with feeling, she said. And we begin with truth. A whisper spread through the palace. The queen had been betrayed, but she would not fall. Not now. Not when the climax had chosen its voice. That night, she knelt beside Jack and placed her hand over his heart. She felt his pain, his fear, his courage, and her own tears fell, not of weakness, but of power. Outside, stars began to shimmer, like they too were holding their breath. Somewhere, light bent the wrong way, a star that was never supposed to flicker. A planet's tide reversed, not with gravity, but with thought. And in the queen's private chamber, a flower, long dead and dry, slowly bloomed again. Across the empire, things were waking up. Not machines, not weapons, but memories. Buried in stars, forgotten in bones, the climax was no longer coming. It was already alive. And it was breathing through a human heart. Jack, he lay inside a healing sphere, floating gently in soft blue light. His eyes were closed, but behind his eyelids, he saw too much. Not dreams, visions. He saw ancient Valorian queens kneeling before a dark sky. He saw earth and fire and rain. His sister calling his name through a war zone he had never lived. He saw the queen crying, though her people had forgotten how. And then, he saw himself, standing not on Earth, not on any planet, but in the center of the galaxy, arms open, glowing like a star made of memory. His body jerked slightly, the machine monitoring his vitals short-circuited, then powered back. Up with different symbols. Symbols not even the queen could read. Outside, the queen watched through the glass. She hadn't left his side since the council's betrayal. She had no more throne, no more command, but what she had now was stronger. Purpose, her inner circle, those still loyal, stood with her. Some carried weapons, others carried music. A strange balance was forming. War and art, logic and emotion, side by side. She knew this was what the myth meant. Not destruction, but transformation. Suddenly, Jack's healing sphere cracked, not broken, but shedding its layer like skin. Light burst from the cracks, golden and warm. Everyone backed away, even the queen. Then Jack floated gently to the ground, awake, eyes wide, glowing not with fire but with memory. The queen stepped forward, her voice low. Jack? He looked at her confused, then calm. I heard everything, he said. Even things you never said out loud. Her breath caught in her throat. What are you? He looked at his hands, then at hers. I'm not sure, he replied. But I don't feel alone anymore. All around them, machines began to activate on their own. Old Valorian data cores began to play music no one remembered. Holograms of ancient council members sang lullabies. The palace transformed into something alive. The queen reached for him, not as a leader, not as a savior, but as someone who needed to know she wasn't dreaming. Jack took her hand. The moment they touched, waves of light shot through the palace. Not in lines or patterns, in spirals, in stories, in emotion. Guards who once feared him dropped to their knees. Children danced in corridors of golden dust. Even the AI in the palace spoke. A new line. Welcome to Phase 2. Emotional synchronization. Outside, the sky turned violet. Ships from the council approached. Massive, cold, prepared for war. Their signals were clear. Surrender the seed. End the spread. Logic must return. The queen stood at the front gates of her palace, not in armor, but in light. Jack stood beside her, calm, his eyes reflecting stars. This is not a battle, she said. This is a choice. The council ships fired a warning pulse. The air shook, buildings trembled, but Jack did not move. Instead, he spoke. Not loud, not angry, but true. I don't want to destroy your world, he said. I want to remind you what it felt like when you had one. Then he raised his hand, not to attack, but to share. A wave of emotion blasted outward. Joy, pain, love, grief, laughter, awe, wonder, heartbreak, forgiveness. It hit the incoming ships like a storm of memory, and inside every enemy pilot. Something broke, or maybe something healed. One by one, the ships powered down. Their weapons retracted, their lights dimmed, and then, bowed, the Queen turned to Jack. Her voice trembled with something sacred. "You didn't destroy them," she whispered. "You woke them." He smiled. "I think that's what the climax really was," he said. "Not the end of us. The beginning of us." From the sky, ancient satellites began to orbit again. Galaxies far away blinked in patterns no one had seen in eons. A signal repeated across all systems. Climax phase complete, rebirth sequence unlocked. The Queen stood tall beside him. No longer just a ruler, now a partner in something greater. Together, they stepped into the new world, not as symbols, not as gods, but as proof that even across galaxies, emotion was still the most powerful force of all. The betrayal had come. But so had something stronger, a bond, an awakening, a war not of weapons, but of meaning, and this time, she would not run, she would rise, *. Before light, there was only breath, one long breath, held by the universe itself. And now, for the first time in 10,000 years, that breath was released, not with a bang, not with fire, but with peace. All across the Valorian Empire, silence hung like soft snowfall. Ships drifted quietly in orbit, their weapons powered down. Councils once filled with commands now sat in stillness, listening to something they didn't yet understand. In the palace, the Queen stood at the highest spire. She looked out at her world, a world she once ruled with law and fear. Now it was glowing, not with war machines, but with music, soft melodies hummed by citizens who had never learned to feel. Now feeling everything, Jack stood beside her. He didn't wear armor. He didn't carry a crown, but galaxies whispered his name. He looked out too, blinking slowly. "It's quiet," he said. "Too quiet." The Queen smiled softly. "Not too quiet," she replied. "Just healing." In the sky, a new constellation formed, one never seen before. It took the shape of two hands reaching for each other, and around it, stars began to move, like they were dancing. The climax had not been an ending, it was correction. A cosmic heartbeat restarting after eons of silence. Down in the capital streets, children played with laughter. Old advisors sang lullabies they didn't know they remembered. Alien species who once feared touch now held hands under golden moons. And above them all, a signal was broadcast across the stars, in every language. The climax has passed, the awakening begins. In the Queen's private chamber, the flame-shaped locket Jack carried since the day he arrived floated mid-air. It opened on its own, showing the photo inside, the woman and child smiling back. But something was different now. They glowed faintly, as if alive in memory, as if the universe had accepted them into its code. Jack saw it and nodded. "I think I get it now," he said. "I was never meant to destroy anything." "No," the Queen replied. "You were meant to remind us what we lost." They walked together through the palace, not in silence, but through gentle celebration. Everyone they passed bowed, but not out of fear, out of gratitude, not for being saved, but for being remembered. Later that day, the council appeared, not as enemies, but as guests. The same voices who once demanded logic now spoke with softer tones. "We didn't understand," one of them said. "We thought emotion was weakness." The Queen stood tall. "No," she answered. "It was the part of us that made everything else matter." The council stepped forward. "For the first time in history," they said, "we ask, not order. Will you lead us into this new era?" But the Queen looked at Jack, then back at them. "I will not lead alone," she said, "not as a ruler, but as a witness." Jack stepped beside her. Not as a king, not as a god, but as a human, a man who once fixed engines and sang too. The stars, without knowing they could hear him, together They wrote a new law, only one sentence long, etched into every tower, every ship, every sky. To feel is not weakness. It is creation. 100 years later, they still talked about the climax, but not with fear, with love. They said it was the moment when stars remembered how to shine, when people stopped hiding from pain and started healing through it, when the universe stopped spinning blindly and began to listen. They remembered the queen who let her crown go, and the human who never asked to be chosen, only to be heard. Some say Jack lived forever. Others say he became part of the stars. Some say he returned to Earth, walking quietly through the ruins, planting seeds no one could see. The truth? No one knows, but above every home, every city, every galaxy, one new star always remained. It never moved. It never dimmed. It simply watched, like a heartbeat made of memory. And when someone felt alone or lost or unsure, they would look at that star and whisper, he didn't end the world. He reminded it how to feel,